Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar, which the British Chamber of Commerce is hosting on IP protection in the time of COVID-19. My name is Chris Nelson. I'm the Executive Director / Trustee of the Chamber, and the British Chamber is a very dynamic organization. We have 300 members, and despite the challenges obviously presented to everybody, we are continuing actually to grow and support our members during this difficult time. Today's program, we'd like to acknowledge the other speakers that will be on. First of all, obviously this is being done by attorney E.J. Baranda, who's a member of the Chamber, and they've been very active, and it'll be a very good presentation obviously on IP protection. The others which I'd like to make note of is, of course, our friends and partners from the British Embassy. Today we have Alistair Totti, who is the Charge d'Affaires. Alistair has been in the Philippines now, I think it's over a year. He's a great supporter. And also with him is Ina Murillo, who is head of the Prosperity Fund. Here today, we're working with the British Embassy as we do on many issues, and I will let Alistair and Ina explain that. But the British Chamber and the Embassy has a close working relationship in terms of developing trade and investment, also supporting here in terms of what the Prosperity Fund is doing, in terms of activities on obviously supporting IP protection. And I'd just like to thank them for their work. So thank you to Alistair, to Ina, and again to Attorney Baranda, and to everybody who's joined in. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. If you need any further information on the British Chamber, please contact Kina or Lynn Rania. And once again, please stay well and protected, and know that the Chamber is here to help you, support you in any way. Thank you very much, everybody, and I wish to turn it over now. I believe it's over to Alistair. Am I correct, Kina?
Yes, Chris.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Ina. As Chris says, I'm Alistair Totti. I'm the British Charge d'Affaires at the UK Embassy. I've been here a couple of years now. Yeah, longer than Chris thought. Time has flown by. Loving my time in the Philippines, and it's a great honor to be asked to say a few words to you today. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on intellectual property protection in the time of coronavirus. And I hope you have all been keeping safe and well. So I'm delighted to have this opportunity to welcome all of you to this discussion and the official launch of the IP Enforcement Manual, a very important tool in this new normal context we find ourselves in, where transparent and efficient operations clearly have a central role to play in all our business. As many countries slowly emerge from the worst of the pandemic, the UK remains fully committed to help our partner countries, especially the Philippines and the wider ASEAN community, in their recovery plans as we try to build back stronger, supporting vital economic development to strengthen the business landscape. The key driver of this is the robust enforcement of intellectual property and to promote an environment conducive for trade, business, innovation, and social development. Every one of you joining us today knows full well the value of IP as a strategic asset. It can take the form of an innovative product, company logo, and or even aesthetic design created to set your business venture apart from others. Businesses use IP to expand into overseas markets, forge key partnerships, and improve revenue and margins. Through the British government's Prosperity Fund and ASEAN Economic Reform Programme, the UK can enable meaningful knowledge sharing like this and practical tools like the IP Enforcement Manual to support you in your endeavours. So I want to express gratitude to the British Chamber of Commerce, to our partners PwC and Rouse, our delivery partners, for organising this webinar and taking forward the financial services and intellectual property pillar of UK development work. I'd also like to recognise the strong support of the Philippine government in this effort through the Intellectual Property Office, led by Director General Raul Barba. Not very long ago, DG Barba led the biggest Philippine ministerial visit to the UK in 2018, an effort closely supported by the British Chamber in November of that year. And I'm glad to see these economic and trade ties further deepening since then. I do hope this webinar will be useful for all of you and your business ventures. Thank you, and handing back to Ina.
Thanks for that, Alistair. And to introduce to us what the FSIP program is, let me call on the head of Prosperity Fund and Economic Attaché of the British Embassy Manila, Ms. Leonina Murillo.
Hello, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Alistair. Thank you also to Chris and Kina, our MC. I would like to echo our many thanks to each one of you for finding time to join this webinar. I'm Ina Murillo. I'm head of the Prosperity Fund at the British Embassy in Manila. And I'm happy to share with you our expanding socio-economic and development work under the Prosperity Fund here in the Philippines. As an overview, the Prosperity Fund is a 1.2 billion pound multi-year ODA program which aims to remove barriers to economic growth in order to promote inclusive and sustainable economic growth, gender balance, and wealth creation in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. In the Philippines, we operate with a unified platform of inclusive and sustainable socio-economic development that also promotes mutual prosperity. We have an existing stream of 8 ODA program strands that cover business environment reforms, low carbon economy, infrastructure, and social development through health and education. One of our very active regional programs is the UK Prosperity Fund ASEAN Economic Reform Program. A critical component of this is the financial sector and intellectual property strand, where this effort, through continued strong partnership with PwC, Rouse, and the Philippine IPO, have borne strong roots over the past months. We are very pleased to partner with the BCCP to launch the Philippines IP Enforcement Guide as a ready resource for businesses in the country to use as a practical tool in this new normal. As Alistair shared earlier, intellectual property refers to innovative creations, rightfully celebrated and protected through robust enforcement of IP rules. Often, this is largely uncharted territory for small businesses finding their way in the complex setting of, yes, just setting up a business. I myself, growing up in a small family business, I felt IP was was a very distant concept for me. But seeing how the digital economy is shaping now, how consumers' preferences are evolving, and how closely knit the global market is becoming, IP is indeed a central strategic asset for us today. Through this program, we have developed the Philippines IP Enforcement Manual to help businesses in very practical terms, especially the MSMEs, better understand the enforcement landscape of IP in the Philippines. This manual is a practical source of information on the IP enforcement system to equip UK and international businesses, whether potential investors or those already fully operating here in the country, about relevant procedures, laws, and regulations in the country. As this program has a regional remit, and I think we have our colleague Desmond also on the line, we will also be developing and launching a series of enforcement manuals for other ASEAN countries where there is currently no central or common IP legal system. The government of the Philippines has also recognized IP as a key driver of the economy and have committed to building a strong and effective IP system to promote innovation and attract foreign investments. The recently published Philippine National IP Strategy helps map out priorities and initiatives for the government to strengthen the domestic IP system and build a conducive environment for businesses. We're also very happy to share that the partnership with the UK Intellectual Property Office has also established a Southeast Asia IP network to support UK businesses on their IP needs. The network provides one-to-one advice and support for businesses and leads the UK's IP engagements with the regional governments in ASEAN. So to close that overview, I would like to again express our gratitude to the BCCP, gratitude also to our continued strong partnership with PwC and Rouse, led by Attorney Journey EJ, and coordinating with our program lead in the British Embassy Manila, Joey. I'm imagining that we're all in a common function room right now, as in our past activities and other brown bag sessions in IPOFIL. I hope that even in this virtual setting, we get to maximize this opportunity designed to support you, businesses hurtling through this transition and shaping what the new normal will look like for all of us. Looking forward to a very lively discussion and launch this afternoon. Maraming salamat.
Thank you for that, Ms. Ina. And to start off our webinar and to help us run through the IP enforcement manual, allow me to introduce our guest speaker for today. He has over 15 years of experience and is a recognized expert in intellectual property. His work includes litigating intellectual property actions and conducting enforcement actions, as well as prosecution of patent and trademark applications and drafting patent specifications. He has a degree in molecular biology and biotechnology from the University of the Philippines and obtained his law degree from the same university. He was admitted to the Philippine Bar in 2001. In 2007, he obtained his Master's of Law from the University of Michigan Law School, with intellectual property as his area of concentration. He was also admitted to the New York Bar in October 2011. He has international experience as a legal practitioner, having served as a foreign legal advisor in Calvin Shia Partnership, an established regional law firm based in Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Attorney Edmund Baranda.
Thank you, Ina, for the introduction. And thank you as well to the BCCP for giving us the opportunity to present this IP enforcement manual that we prepared under the FSIP program. My talk will be divided into three parts. While the main focus of my talk is about the enforcement manual for businesses, I'm going to talk about first the COVID-19 IP trends or IP protection in what we call the new normal. And before I go to the enforcement manual, I'll give an overview of IP enforcement in the Philippines. So COVID-19 IP trends. We've been on lockdown for 100 days. I think it was 100 day yesterday. And we've spotted these trends. First is the use of online space. I think among the biggest impacts of the COVID-19 is the use of online space and especially e-commerce. I think almost everyone is into e-commerce nowadays, whether as a buyer or a seller. And I think all of us have this friend or acquaintance who at some point during the lockdown was into selling stuff online, like it could be longanisa, siomai, and other foodstuffs. So and these memes that I'm showing you have become really popular during the COVID-19, and again, I guess it underscores how popular online selling is under this new normal, and we see that it's going to continue even after the lockdown. Another impact of COVID-19 is use of online ads, and I'm showing you perhaps my favorite online ad during the lockdown. This is by a local sardines brand. So what was remarkable about these online ads is that, and the reason why it resonated so much to the public is because they weren't afraid of referencing current events in their ads. So I think the very first one that was published on their Facebook page was the ad with a green background. It says "No special powers needed," and of course the one in the center is "Social distancing, please." So it's a very clever way of referencing the new normal in their ads. And another reason why I think this ad became really popular and really resonated to the public is because they said that this company spent all their budget for advertising to help the frontliners. So it's generated a lot of goodwill for them. A more recent one, which I really found amusing, is this um, Facebook ad from a marine epoxy brand. This is a local brand, and as you can see from the from this ad, it's I label this a patriotic ad. So it says "Atin to" for the non-Tagalog speakers here. That means this is ours. And if you look at their Facebook post, that ad beside this ad, it says, mula sa talento at kahusayan ng mga manggagawang Pilipino, atin ito. And also says, kaagapay ng mga Pilipinong mangingisda sa pagharap ng hamon ng karagatan. So again, a clever way of promoting their brands by referencing current events. So what's the trend now as far as online market is concerned? We see that both IP owners or brands, as well as infringers, have intensified their online marketing and the use of online markets. And when I say online markets, I'm not just referring to the online platforms like Lazada and Shopee, but also social media. And because of that trend, as an IP practitioner, we advise our clients that online monitoring and enforcement will even become more crucial in this new normal. And companies with IP portfolio should be monitoring ads or links or websites for counterfeit products, and some find a way to redirect traffic to their legitimate distribution channels. In other words, to their own websites, or if they partner with some online platforms to those online platforms where legitimate products are being sold. So because of that, we advise our clients, clients or IP owners, to use the notice and takedown system of online platforms to take down these ads for counterfeit products. And just to underscore the increase in counterfeiting activity even during the pandemic, we've looked at some data from Chinese customs. So these are actual data released by the Chinese customs. So in this slide, it compares the seizures in just one port, Shenzhen. Compares the seizures in Q1 compared to the entire seizures for 2019, and you will see that we're only in Q1, and yet the number of seizures in the first quarter only of 2020, so at the height of the pandemic, of the lockdown, that already represents about 42% of the seizures it made in 2019. So that's 544 versus 1,283. And in terms of number of pieces, that's already greater than the 2019 seizures. So from 18.96 million pieces in 2019, for the first quarter of 2020, there were already 43.85 million pieces that were seized at the Shenzhen port. And in terms of value, that already represents about 50% of the value of the 2019 seizures. And again, I'd like to repeat, that's just Q1. In terms of individual port seizures, from this slide, you will see that in the many ports that reported seizures in China, you will see that the destination of these goods that were seized are all over the world. So you have ASEAN countries there, you have European countries, you have UK, you have other countries in Asia. But I'd like to highlight that if you look at the goods that were seized at these ports, they're your usual counterfeits: clothing, watches, luxury goods. But noteworthy that there was about 8,000 infringing N95 masks that were seized at the port of Shanghai. And I think this is the first case of infringing mask or infringing COVID-19 medical equipment that was seized by the Chinese customs. In terms of China trade flow and trend, so this is about the flow of trade from China to the rest of the world. Predictably, there was a downtrend in the trade flow between China and the European Union and China and the US, and also Japan. But for the ASEAN region, there's even a slight increase, as well as with the between China and Belt and Road. But one statistic that jumps from this table is the value of the China cross-border e-commerce. So it jumped, again, this is just for the first quarter. It already jumped by 1/3, so up by 34.7%. And I think if you're in the Philippines and you order online, I think you may have noticed this. Many of the goods that are being sold on Shopee or Lazada, if you order those goods, some of them will say it will be shipping from China. So that's part of these statistics. So that's China cross-border e-commerce. And predictably, for the first quarter, there was an increase in the online purchase of products that are related to COVID-19. So that these are your, obviously more than 500% increase in sanitizers, hand sanitizers, in wipes, of course, and also in vitamins, and also in hand wash. So what does all these statistics mean? What do all these statistics mean? As far as products that are meant to combat COVID-19, we will see an increased demand, and that demand we think will be sustained. So these are PPEs, medical health devices, and pharmaceutical products. But the downside of that is, as more and more people go online, counterfeiters will also go online, and we project that there will be increase in the counterfeiting of these PPE, medical health devices, and pharmaceutical products. And in fact, during ECQ, the IPO field reported that there were already complaints filed against sellers of counterfeit PPEs, including face masks and even N95 respirators, which of course is very worrisome, because the respirator, for example, is used for to save lives, and if it doesn't save lives, then that will be catastrophic. So on the other hand, many brand owners are recognizing the trend of increased demand for these products. Some of them ventured into producing COVID-19 essential products. And I think you've heard of some US automakers shifting to, from cars, they would shift to manufacturing health devices or equipment to combat COVID-19. Or even, you don't have to be that ambitious. It could also be just face masks, could just be vitamin C. So it's an opportunity for SMEs as well, and not just big companies. So what we did is we went through, we combed through some online platforms and looked for ads for what we think are counterfeits. And this is one ad that we saw. This is for Kirkland Vitamin C, and vitamin C now is so in demand. I mean, I was in the drugstore yesterday and I couldn't buy one because it's out of stock. But we saw this ad. It's for Kirkland, a bottle of Kirkland Vitamin C, and it was only selling for 149 to about 349 pesos. So we think this is counterfeit because of the very low price. We also saw some I think got stuck. Sorry, some technical difficulty. There. We also saw some ads for what we think are counterfeit face masks. If you look at the ad, the image doesn't show any brand, but if you look closely at the description of the mask, it uses the brand 3M. So again, we think for the price of $8.99 for 5 pieces, we think this is also counterfeit. Predictably, some counterfeiters, some enterprising individuals have exploited the demand for face masks by also selling masks bearing famous brands. So here you have LV masks, you have Gucci masks, and they're selling it at a really low price. So as far as I know, these are counterfeits because we don't think LV, or at least or Gucci have launched their own face masks. So we think these are counterfeits. On the other hand, some big brands like Uniqlo and Adidas, for example, are two companies that have latched on the trend, have joined the bandwagon, so to speak. So they have introduced their own brand, their own face masks. So and I'm actually looking forward to the ARISM face mask of Uniqlo, because I'm familiar with the material. And it's really it's very thin, but at the same time it does what it's supposed to do. So, but one worrying trend is that, you know, what's being counterfeited, or what's popular right now, are not just face masks and PPEs, but also obviously pharmaceuticals. So particularly drugs that are supposedly that can be used to treat COVID-19. So here's an example of dexamethasone, which a couple of weeks ago, I think there was a news item that says that it is, in some patients they were able to cure COVID-19 in some patients because by treating them with dexamethasone, which is a steroid. So it's a commonly available steroid. But of course, the worry is that people might think it's a magic pill. They will start buying or buying dexamethasone, and you can actually buy them online legally through this website, but also illegally through maybe through social media. A lot of enterprising individuals have been selling pharma products over social media, which is of course illegal. But the DOH has warned that it's not a magic pill for COVID-19. So that's also a disturbing trend, because you're not supposed to take these medicines without the assistance of a doctor. Okay. So, what we've seen is an increased demand for these COVID-19 essential products, and during the lockdown, we've seen as well that local enforcement agencies have been very active chasing after these counterfeiters. So we've seen we've read reports of customs raiding some Binondo stores that are selling overpriced alcohol or counterfeit PPEs. The BOC has also seized some medical supplies that were counterfeits, and so illegally smuggled medical supplies, and so they decided to just donate it to COVID-19 frontliners. And so our enforcement agents have been pretty active during the lockdown, which again underscores the fact that counterfeiting activities continue to happen even during the lockdown. So it didn't deter them from their infringing activities. So if you are an enterprise, how do you make use of this? What can you do to benefit from this increased demand for COVID-19 essential products? So, well, if you're a company that's into developing these products, then obviously what you could do is to file patent applications for these COVID-19 essential products. On the other hand, if these COVID-19 essential products are not patented here in the Philippines, that means it's part of public domain. So you could actually manufacture that locally. You don't have to pay license fees. But if it's a drug or medicine that's patented in the Philippines, you can do parallel importation, which is allowed under the Cheaper Medicines Act. So again, so these are opportunities for businesses here in the Philippines so that they can exploit this demand for COVID-19 essential products. It could also be an opportunity to license COVID-19 essential products. Of course, do it legally. If you see some, for example, pharmaceutical products that are patented, and you wanna manufacture it locally, then you could ask for a license to manufacture that locally. But I'd just like to point out that if you're gonna distribute pharmaceutical products, you have to deal with the FDA. So you have to comply with the FDA regulations, and there are guidelines for the registration of drug products under emergency use. And I think you've heard about some drugs which are supposed to treat other diseases, but they found that it can be used to alleviate, at the very least, COVID-19 symptoms. Then you have to you have to comply with certain FDA regulations for you to sell that, because that's off-label or unapproved use. While it's a registered drug, it's not registered to cure COVID-19. So there are some regulations that you need to comply in the use and the sale of such off-label drugs. Okay. So again, what are the likely challenges for other brands? And what I mean is that brands that are not don't pertain to, or that don't cover COVID-19 essential brands. Well, as I've shown in the statistics, it has not stopped counterfeiters. There's also the counterfeiting trend for non-PPE products are the same if you compare, if not increasing, if you compare to pre-COVID-19 times. And the sad thing about this is that if the counterfeiters may be emboldened by inactive brand owners, meaning because of budgetary constraints, we understand that some brand owners are not really abandoning some of their IP portfolio, but maybe not putting a lot of importance to it. So counterfeiters may latch onto that. Well, of course, we have the problem of consumer underspending because of uncertainty. So of course that will be a challenge for non-COVID-19 essential brands. But we think that if you're into food, household products, cosmetic products, we think that it's likely the market for that will be sustained. Those companies involved in these products will likely recover and sustain their current market. But again, you just have to monitor for infringers that attract buyers by offering very low prices for these products. The most challenging, I think, will the industry that will be experiencing the strongest challenge, I think, would be those in the luxury and hospital brands, because again, as I mentioned earlier, these luxury brands may even consider abandoning certain portfolios because there's no market for those brands anymore, and this may be taken advantage of by bad faith applicants. So if they see that a certain luxury brand has abandoned a certain market, they may try to register that in the Philippines under their own name. Another thing that we should watch out for is price gouging, and we've seen this and we've seen it for face masks and even for vitamin C. Some resellers are selling it at a very, very high price, maybe times 10, times 5 their SRP. So aside from the violation of a Consumer Act, brand owners should be concerned as well about this, because it might have an effect on their reputation or goodwill, because people may attribute the high price increase to the company itself and not to the reseller. So with that, what should brands do? If the brands don't have a standalone website, they need to partner with third-party online platforms like Lazada and Shopee, so that they will have a stronger presence online. And I've said this before, you have to still continue monitoring both online and offline infringements, because as we've seen from the statistics, the counterfeiters did not stop their activities during the lockdown. So that's the backdrop. That's the new normal, so to speak. So how do you enforce IP now, given that backdrop? Before I go to the manual, I'd like to briefly just give an overview of IP enforcement in the Philippines, which is of course also covered by our manual. But let me just briefly give you an overview of IP enforcement in the Philippines. So IP enforcement pertains to violation of intellectual property rights. So in our IP code, you have these intellectual properties. So the right that is mostly violated here in the Philippines are trademark rights and copyright rights. So in COVID-19, it's really more of we see a lot of trademark infringement and trademark infringing goods and unfairly competing goods. The unfair competition means you're passing off your goods as the goods of another. So also under among the IP rights that's described in our IP code are patent rights or utility model or industrial design rights. Although this is not so much a problem for COVID-19 products, because at least in the Philippines, we don't have a manufacturing capacity. So what we see mostly are trademark infringing goods or copyright infringing goods. So those are the IP rights under our IP code, and this is the basis of IP enforcement. This flowchart hopefully encapsulates the criminal IP rights procedure in the Philippines. The figures in blue are the steps that you need to take based on the rules, while the items in the green part are what the IP owners or a person who wants to enforce their IP need to do. So we start with investigating the target, and we could start with an online seller. So you could do a trap purchase, and once you've purchased the sample and confirm that it's fake, then you go to the police or the NBI to request assistance. Then you ask for a search warrant application. Then you do a raid action, and then a post-raid action. You have options. You could either pursue a criminal complaint with the DOJ and then go through court processes, which could be long, or you could settle. You could ask the target to comply with your demands, like identifying their source or agree to the destruction of the goods, and as well as sign an undertaking not to repeat the infringement or even pay damages. So those are your options. You don't, like I said, you don't have to go through the entire procedure, because that could take long. And as you can see in this next slide, from experience as an IP practitioner, it takes about 3 to 5 years really to prosecute criminally and for IP infringement. So what we usually advise clients is that in post-raid action, so after you do the raid, try to negotiate with the target and see if you can come up with a settlement agreement. So that will shorten your enforcement action from 5 years to just under 2 months. So we've seen some positive results for within 2 months from the raid action. We were able to sign an the target. We were able to compel the target to sign a settlement agreement and comply with all our demands. So after that, what we do is we move for the destruction of the seized goods, so that we don't pay for the storage fees. So that will virtually end your enforcement action, and for most IP owners, they're happy with that result, because what they're really after is to stop the sale of the infringing items. So in enforcement, which government agencies do you work with? So these are the government agencies that you'll be working with, again, depending on your objective. So these are your options. So obviously you can work with the police or the NBI if you want to do a raid action. If you want to stop goods at the border, then you could work with the Bureau of Customs. You could record your trademarks with the Bureau of Customs and ask them to stop counterfeits at the border. If you are an industry that's involved in optical media, so DVD, CDs, you could work with the Optical Media Board and ask them to do a raid of establishments that are selling pirated copies of your work. Then there's FDA for drugs, DOJ when you file a criminal complaint, and IPO-FIL, which has its own administrative processes, which I will describe later, and also the DTI. So again, NBI and PNP for raid actions, BOC for seizing counterfeits at the border, OMB for optical media, and FDA if you want to go after individuals who are selling fake drugs, or they are selling unregistered drugs, That means that they brought in, these are originals, but they didn't register it with the FDA. Then you can ask the FDA to conduct a raid and seize those unregistered drugs and cosmetic products. Like I said, DOJ, that's when if you want to pursue a criminal complaint, you start with the DOJ. And then IPO Phil, maybe not very known yet for too many business owners. They actually have an IP enforcement office, which is an alternative. They can issue notices, warning letters, or even coordinate with other agencies for enforcement action. They can even do visits. So it's an alternative to doing a raid action. So if you don't want to spend too much on raid action, you could go to the IPO field to do a visit or issue a warning letter. The DTI, or the Department of Trade and Industry, has a Fair Trade Enforcement Bureau, and which enforces laws on consumer protection. So if you have any complaints against sellers of consumer goods, maybe, yeah, like I said earlier, maybe it's overpriced, or the quality is not as advertised, or more importantly, if a certain individual has registered a business name that bears your trademark, then you go to the DTI to have that business name registration canceled. Of course, you have the courts. If you really want to pursue a criminal or civil action, you go to the courts, and then that's all. If you want to do a search warrant application, if you want to conduct a raid, and you file a search warrant application with the courts. And I'd just like to point out that there are 4 courts: Quezon City, Manila, Makati, and Pasig regional trial courts, which have the authority to issue search warrants that are enforceable nationwide. An alternative to a civil action with the courts is an administrative IP violation case before the Bureau of Legal Affairs of the IPO FID. So for them to have jurisdiction, you just have to allege in your complaint that the damages that you suffered is greater than 200,000 pesos. But and the BLA will be able to provide the same remedies like damages, injunction, destruction of infringing goods. So that's a brief overview of IP enforcement and the government agencies that you will have to deal with. So this is actually the meat of my talk, but I'm not gonna spend time going through each page because we believe that the manual itself, it's already business friendly, reader friendly, and we if you don't understand what's in the manual, that means that we failed in our job. But I think we're pretty confident that we're able to come up with a manual that's easy to understand and business friendly. So again, I think the previous speakers have already mentioned this. Why did we have to make a manual? What's the purpose? We wanted to demystify a complex subject. As Ina said, many individuals are not very familiar with IP. So we think that while the manual has some technical matters there, we provided a lot of commentaries and some practical tips so that you'll be able to appreciate more the technical aspect of IP protection. And by the way, the slides that I discussed before the manual are most of that, the content of those slides are in the manual. And you'll have more details there. We also wanted to publicize this to boost transparency. I think it's already mentioned that the ambition here is to have a full manual across all 10 countries in the ASEAN. And under the FSIP program, we want to publish at least 3 manuals, publish the manual in 3 countries. So that's the Philippines. So this is one, and there'll be a similar event in Indonesia and Vietnam. So again, this is to provide more transparency at the local level. So our goal here is to help not just local companies, but also who may not have, local companies may not have an IP specialist. They may not have an IP lawyer. Hopefully the manual will help. But this is also targeted to British or other international companies who are already in the Philippine market and want to learn more about IP, or maybe an international or British company who is about to enter the Philippine market and wants to know the IP enforcement here in the Philippines. But I'd like to emphasize what's in the manual is not legal advice on a specific situation. So you will still, it's just a tool to help you understand a complex set of rules, and you still have to consult an IP lawyer for any specific situations. Okay, so this is the manual. It's already been uploaded as of last week. I think it was on June 15. So you could go to the Richam website and then click on resources and then click on legal updates, and then you'll see there you can click on the link to the manual. So it's in PDF format. You could download that, of course, for free. So what's inside? Basically, it's what I already described in the second part of my talk. So it talks about what are trademarks, what are copyrights, how do you protect them, and then how do you enforce your IP rights through a criminal case, and also through a civil case. We have a very short chapter on digital IP infringement for trademark and copyright infringing goods. And then there's a chapter on customs and how do you use the authority of the customs to seize counterfeits at the border. Then admin IP enforcement through the BLA and other enforcement issues. And then we have a flow chart similar to what I flashed earlier, but I think it's a more detailed one. And then some contact details of IP enforcement agencies in the Philippines. So let me just walk you through the manual. Again, I'm not going to discuss every page of this because, again, we believe that by reading it, I think we would like to believe that it will give you a fairly good idea about IP enforcement in the Philippines. So we made it really business friendly, reader friendly, with a lot of examples and commentaries. So the first page will discusses about the UK governance FSIP program, and this was discussed earlier by Alistair and Ina. And then the next page is about an overview of the Philippine legal system and IP system. So, and I guess this is useful for businesses that are new to the market. And then the next chapter would be the basics in trademark and copyright protection and enforcement. So we stated the law, but reworded or rephrased them so that it will be simpler to understand. And then like I said earlier, we have a lot of commentaries which will provide some tips on how you protect your trademarks, how you protect your copyrights, some watch outs or additional points about copyright and trademark protection and enforcement. So all throughout the manual, you see a lot of these commentaries, which again, hopefully will make it easier for you to understand IP. So again, so we have a separate chapter for criminal IP enforcement and a civil IP enforcement. And then again, this is the part on digital IP infringement. Bottom line is, unfortunately, there's a gap in the rules for when it comes to digital IP infringement. We think that our legal framework is not comprehensive enough to cover the online space. So we have provided some commentary there. But the good news is there's a pending bill right now. It's a House bill filed by Congressman Gatchalian, and I think it's being discussed in Congress right now. So hopefully that will be passed before the end of session of Congress, and so that will effectively fill in the gap in our rules. Then again, so this is a chapter on border control measures. So it describes on how you can work with the BOC to protect your IP and also enable them to seize counterfeits at the border. So it describes the steps that you need to take to seek the assistance of the BOC. Then we have a chapter on administrative IP enforcement. Like I said, it's an alternative to courts, which we think is a good alternative because courts, as you may know, are clogged. Their dockets are clogged. It may take years and years for your cases to be prosecuted and to be decided by the judge. So an alternative is to go to the Bureau of Legal Affairs of the IPO bill, which can cut down the time frame within which a decision will be arrived at for your case. We also have provided some enforcement options or out-of-court alternatives to IP owners. So we have alternative dispute resolution, which is available in the Philippines. It's very much promoted by the IPO field. Although we've observed that still not widely resorted to by parties, and I think it's because some parties prefer still to go through a court-like procedure to decide on their rights. But we, as an advocate as well, we think that ADR or mediation is a very effective alternative to enforcement. So if only more parties would be more open-minded about this, I think it will cut down the number of cases of our courts and also of the IPO bill. We have a short chapter on gender equality and social inclusion, because that's one of the goals of the Prosperity Fund. So in this section, you'll find the role of IP in promoting gender equality and social inclusion. What we've actually seen is that there are a lot of women who are involved in the informal sector, in the particularly in online selling. As if you recall, in my first slide, there's this meme referring to cis, how much ito cis. So it's an acknowledgement that a lot of online sellers are actually women. So in this section, we discuss how IP enforcement will open opportunities for more women into the formal economy. So from being in the informal economy to formal economy. So again, takeaways is my last slide. So we've seen that in COVID-19, the new trend is that counterfeiters did not go away. In fact, some of them have been emboldened. They've exploited the situation to bring in more counterfeits into the market. So we would still recommend and strongly recommend to protect your IP through registration of intellectual properties and of course monitoring the markets, especially the online space. So because again, online platforms are being used more widely used than ever. So the battleground now is shifting from offline to online. So we want you to you could work closely with the local counsel or an investigation firm to monitor the infringement and then seek remedies or alternatives to court actions. And more importantly, you have this guide, you have the manual which is already up on the British BitCham Philippines website. We would be happy if you download that and use it as a general guide to IP enforcement. So at the very least, it's a resource for you to understand what IP is and how to enforce your IP here in the Philippines. But again, any specific IP case, you can consult a professional for that. So that's it. I'd be happy to answer questions. Kina, over to you.
Hi, attorney. Thank you so much for that. The floor is now open. Should you have other questions, you can unmute yourself.